In an online interview that I had watched, you actually mentioned that your aim was actually to become a romantic lead. And in fact, there was this quote, you said, "Chicks want to do you, guys want to be you." Now, just to keep things in perspective, Daniel's a good family man, right? So this quote was made in the context of how showbiz tends to park you into sort of very two-dimensional roles, right? Either the comedian or character actor or romantic lead, and romantic lead tends to take the top spot. So does Lost count as one of those romantic leads?
I think it's a step that way. You know, even to say I would want to be a romantic lead is a little bit reductive. It's not really just about being a romantic lead. It's about being a three-dimensional character. You know, and that involves being romantic when that's called for, and being a man when that's called for. And you know, when I said that quote about chicks want to do you and guys want to be you, that was actually a quote by a Hollywood producer about what defines a leading man. So that's something that we haven't until very recently seen on the big screen. And so that was something that I thought was really missing in the way Asian American men in particular are portrayed.
And specific to Lost, what did Lost do for you, Daniel Day Kim, the actor?
Well, most of you know me because of Lost, I think, right? So I get to come to places like this and talk about that experience because it was a worldwide success. And you know, there's nothing like the power of television, you know, to kind of introduce yourselves worldwide to audiences. There really, you know, at the risk of sounding immodest, there really isn't any place in the world that I've gone where I haven't been recognized for Lost, and that's you know, Singapore and Asia, Europe. I mean, tiny little airports in, you know, Eastern Europe. So it really speaks to the power of television.
And what would you say to actors who are searching for that big break? I mean, in other words, what you've been saying, that for Lost, that is really quite a game changer for you. What would you say to actors who are searching for that big break?
Well, I think I would say that there's so much beyond our control as actors. You know, you can't control your race, you can't control your gender. Well, actually, now you kind of can. But you know, there are a lot of variables. So don't worry about what you can't control. Worry about what you can control. And the number one thing you can control is your ability and your work ethic. And so if you're an actor, make sure you're in classes. It's less important how many Instagram followers you have, and more important, you know, how you're working at your craft. And that should be job one. So things like that. You could say people have more talent, but I always say that work ethic will eventually outdo lazy talent.
And I think we'd be very interested to hear more about that work ethic, because Daniel is, of course, not just an actor anymore. He's also stepped into producing roles, right? He's his own company as well, so we'll be speaking to him more about that. But at this moment, I know that there must be some questions from the audience, so I'm going to open up to the floor for a question or two. There's a microphone, and I just ask you to raise your hand so that I can just point you out so that the microphone can go to you. Would there be anyone with a question?
Not all at once, please.
Singaporean modesty, it takes a while to roll up. Anybody? Yes, one question over here.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Nice to meet you today.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, I want to ask you the one question. You want to act here in Singapore?
I think it will be really interesting to act in Singapore.
You can act in Singapore better, then we can see you easily.
Thank you very much. I have a friend, Jimmy, who's been acting in Singapore for a while, so I'll ask him for advice and tips on what I need to do to succeed here. But you know, ever since I started acting, you know, in New York City, there were actors being auditioned for Singapore Rep in New York, and so friends were coming out here to work in the theater from the time I started. So I was aware of Singapore and the arts in Singapore. And there's a film from Singapore in competition that we just screened for the film festival that we really enjoyed as well. So there's a nice tradition of cinema and theater here.
That's That's great. We hope to see you here very soon then.
Yes.
There was a question over here as well, right? This gentleman over here, yeah?
Hi Daniel, Richard from the Philippines actually. And big fan of yours, of course, from Lost. How was it, because back then, like Asian Americans actually being on TV is not actually like a very, very big thing. And how was it working with, almost an all-white cast like back then? Was there, is there a bit of like uneasiness, or was it very comfortable? Like, how was that?
It was just very normal because that's all the casts were. They were all white, and so back at the time of Lost, there was always one Asian person somewhere in the cast, kind of on the side of the picture. Very often the guy who comes in and gives information to the lead white guy and says, "Here's what you need to do," and then the white guy says, "I'm going to do it," and then they take off. Things are different now, thankfully, and now we're finally seeing roles where it's not so understood who's the lead of the show. And if you have a horror movie and you have one black character and one Asian character, you're not sure that the Asian character and the black character are going to die first. So, so back then it just was understood and accepted that that's how it was. So I'm very happy that things have moved forward.
Was it difficult to sort of maintain some sort of inner compass vis-a-vis how you were moving in the industry, since it was so normal to be working with an all-white cast and us Asians being sort of a minority?
Yeah, no, it was difficult, but it's difficult for an actor of any race to succeed. Actors here in Singapore, where the majority is Asian, it's not easy to be an actor here. It's a very competitive field. So, was there an additional burden because of race? Yes. Just the idea that, for instance, when I first met on Hawaii Five-0, I asked the lead producer if I could maybe be Dano or McGarrett. And he said, "Well, we're just not going that way." Little things like that. It's just a simple answer, but it has such big consequences when they don't consider that that's even a possibility. So that was the world as it was not so long ago, and so I had to be content with whatever I could get, which is why when Lost came around, it was such a big event because the character grew into a legitimate part of the ensemble and not just someone who was there as window dressing.
Thank you. There was a question over here.
Oh, I think he has asked the question for me.
Okay, thank you. Another hand behind.
I don't think I need a mic. So, have you received any casting call for Crazy Rich Asians Part 2?
Well, isn't this a land of crazy rich Asians? Where are you guys? I was talking with John Chu, the director, when Crazy Rich Asians, the first one, was casting, and it was a project that I knew about pretty early, and I thought that it was going to be significant even then. As far as the second one and the third one, maybe, who knows? John and I know each other well. I'm friends with a lot of the cast, and it's just a question of whether there's the right role at the right time.
So, another follow-up question.
Not allowed. Okay, yes.
So now, with the success of Crazy Rich Asians, do you think that will open more doors for Asian American actors or even Asian actors for Hollywood?
Yeah, no, I'm already seeing it. It's as a producer, I'm creating new shows and new projects, and it's easier now for me to introduce projects that have all Asian casts or Asian leads, and that wasn't the case maybe 6 or 7 months ago. My production company has been in existence since 2013, and that's always been a primary goal, to put Asians in lead roles. And it was always an uphill battle. And we've had many projects that haven't been able to go forward, even though they were really worthwhile, because networks were not ready to put an Asian person in the lead. But just recently, we sold a project to ABC with an Asian man as the lead, and the second lead is an Asian female. And so that's an example of the progress that we're making.